Hey guys, I hope you're well. You are joining me on the Talkwards. It's me, Nat Rich, and this evening I have a full house. This is the most I've ever had in one little zoo at the moment. I love it. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. It's about conscious relationships, and we're going to go into the awkward Talkwards and just have a really nice chat. But I'm going to ask a few kind of uncomfortable questions because I want to kind of demonstrate, because I don't have a relationship myself, but I'm doing this indirectly through my friends, about how you can really have awkward talks in relationships. And it doesn't have to be the end of your relationship. It can just be the beginning of some more deeper intimacy, which is what we're all here to achieve. So I'll introduce, first and foremost, I will start with Charles, who now looks like, oh, there you go, Charles and Flo. They are dear friends of mine. And Charles, you will recognize from joining me on other shows. Flo has not yet made a debut on the radio until today. It's your first time. Ta-da! Thank you very much for joining me, guys. How are you feeling today?
Excellent.
Good.
Yeah, couldn't be better.
Good. Very good.
And Maria and Sasha. So this is the first time I've technically met you guys, and you're friends of Flo and Charles's. And Sasha, you're joining me on another call with Charles, I think next week or the week after. I can't remember which week it is. But you offered to come on as a team today to join this conversation. So thank you so much for that. How are you doing?
Good. Very good.
Very good.
Great. Happy to be here.
Amazing. And no reason to be nervous at all. I'm going to be very kind with you. I know I've never met you, but I will do my best to make it feel comfortable. And then we've got Julianne. So Julianne has, I don't know how many shows you've done with me now. It's loads. It feels like loads. But, so I brought Julianne on thinking, yes, going to have another single lady in the house. And then she just peed all over that and just told me that she's in a new relationship as of very recent times. So it's just me who's here holding up the single corner over here, but I will do my best. And we've got some comments coming in already, so thank you so much, guys, for reaching out. If you've got any questions for these guys, obviously chuck them in and I will do my best to have a look and see if I don't miss anything. But I wanted to, just before I go into the questions, I just want to explain in terms of relationships. Obviously, coming from a single perspective, I can't really talk on a conscious relationship as such, which is why I've enabled these guys to join me. But I want to know that if you are listening and you're in a relationship, or if you are dating someone at the moment, what we're trying to do here is create a space for you to reflect on. And a reflection is literally just for you to sit there and see how you feel about the content that we're putting out. By no way is this going to be solid advice and, you know, you need to go ahead with it. But if there are some ideas that you can use at home, then we highly recommend that you do so, but you do them with your own responsibility, with your own logic and with your own judgment in mind. And don't blame anyone for anything that goes tits up if you don't deliver anything right. We cannot be held accountable. But yes, if we are dipping into something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then just notice that, see what comes up for you and see if there's any kind of reflection there that you might need to work on. So, and we're not here to make you get triggered, but obviously we're here to have a talkward. So first question is, and I'm going to ask each one of you, and I know you'll probably have slightly different answers, but I'm going to start with Maria and Sasha. And I'm going to ask you guys, how would you define a conscious relationship as opposed to, let's say, a normal one that most people would be used to? What do you guys explain as a conscious relationship?
Good question.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can start. I guess for me, a conscious relationship is, as the word suggests, being more conscious when in a relationship. So how would I define that personally, I guess, is being aware, I think, of oneself and of the other person you're in relationship with. Being thoughtful, mindful, and constantly kind of going within to search for the answers. So when there's a conflict, going within and thinking, okay, what's triggering me? Why did I feel that way or the other way? And why did I respond in that way or the other way? And continuously, I guess, coming back to that word of being conscious. That would be my first words that come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I could add to that in a way that I think it's very, also in our relationship, I think what makes a big difference, and I would say that is for me being conscious, is also kind of actively observing what is going on, actively observing oneself, the other, and then also the system that is created when we are together, and giving each of us the space to be authentic, herself and himself, myself, however, in a way that is that always includes, kind of a love as a base in a way, which can get rough at some point, but always kind of knowing that there is the trust that because we can be so honest, open, and vulnerable with each other, we can even get rougher in a way with each other and mirroring each other even more.
And did you guys go on, say that again?
Knowing, I guess, you always meet yourself in the other person. This is, I think, something, to have in mind.
Did you guys know that before you got together? Did you know that you were going to have a conscious relationship? Is it something you co-created together, or have you had them before and that's what you were looking for before you met? Because I have no idea how long you've been together or how you met. So
that's a great question. If I can start with the answer, I would say the space where we met definitely set a very different foundation. So we met on a very, very, very intensive personal development boot camp. And we were completely, let's say, naked there. A word we came up with later when we actually got together.
When we actually got naked.
Yeah. Was just how we were completely authentic with each other. And at this event, there was, at this stage, we were strangers, essentially, but we were completely naked in a non-literal sense in front of each other. And I think this set up a very strong foundation just as a human connection, and not in the beginning a romantic relationship, even though the attraction was there. But it was just such a different foundation. And then later on, when we did get together, sort of soon after, not so long after, for me, it was definitely the first time I was in such a conscious relationship where from the very first moment, there was just nothing to hide, like complete nakedness, literal and non-literal, and complete vulnerability with each other. I think that was a huge difference for me.
Yeah, for me too. I think because you asked also, how was that before? There is this, it's very lame in a way, but you can only kind of look so deep or go so far as you went yourself. I think that before I met Maria, I wasn't able to have that conscious relationship that I have with her. So being in several relationships, I think I, from my side, brought a very different package with me at this point when we met, also relating to, the space Maria just described, I guess. I think this is probably it.
Okay, cool. And Charles and Flo, I obviously know how you met, but nobody else, like other listeners, do. So do you want to kind of introduce yourselves and say how you met? And if you were obviously in terms of a conscious relationship, your understanding of that, and then obviously if you went into that in the same way, or if it's grown and developed.
I know Flo was concerned that she wouldn't be able to get in a word in edgeways, so I'm going to let her start. Consciously.
Conscious relationship.
Yeah.
We met at Noisley. I worked for Charles's festival and produced their healing area, which I guess was an interesting start for us. And it was something we had such a deep connection so quickly. It was a real sense of familiarity, and we both felt that. So from the get-go, there was this what felt like a very safe space to be who we were. I don't think there was a conscious awareness of the fact we were entering into a conscious relationship, but that our connection allowed us to have that quite naturally. And I guess for me, I think Marie put it really well. It's, the word says it, that to be able to be conscious, to have an awareness of oneself, of one's surroundings, to be present in the moment, to be present with other people. And I think it goes deeper as well as that kind of consciousness. It's a willingness. Charles touched on it last night. There's, a capacity to communicate and to want to do better, to work together as a team, but by working, because in a relationship, it's your own conscious journey and you come together as a unit. So how you deepen that journey of self-discovery to include not just yourself and your own experience, to consider someone else in that process. And yeah, I think you do see a lot in your partners. They trigger a lot. Someone said it to me this week, your soulmates are the ones that, there's an incredible connection, but they also challenge you in ways that, whether it's, looking in the reflection and working on yourself, or reflecting back at someone and working as a team to navigate that journey. And again, I was talking about it this week about how do you unite your own path with someone else's and fulfill both of your needs and desires without necessarily compromising the other's journey. How do you interweave and the communication, I think, is a huge part of it.
Well, it's like we were saying last night, communication. I think when anyone is asked what's the most important part of a relationship, is communication. And actually, we sort of pondered it. And actually, I think it's a willingness to communicate, not necessarily communication itself, because we can all communicate in a certain way. But it's a willingness to bend and not compromise, but melt into each other's experience of communication and a willingness to let. And I think, I'd never been in a conscious relationship before I met Flo, and I think I had been unconscious and I'd started to become aware and I'd wake up. And I think because of that 18-month journey between my ex-girlfriend that I was with for 6.5 years and finally get to a point when I was happy being alone. And I remember sitting in the tent at Noisley on Sunday night being like, I'm so happy being by myself. And 8 hours later, it was like,
I'd had the same experience that week. I'd asked myself the question, is what I'm looking for in a relationship, am I asking too much of wanting that connection? And actually had a resolve after a very wild Glastonbury that, alone in my caravan between festival gigs, that I too was, okay with the fact that, I had a great life, I had great friends, and that resolve in myself and happened to Charles at the same time.
It was absolutely insane. The energy when we got together was just like unreal. You could try and write about it and talk about it, but you cannot express how that was. I mean, I designed a ring 6 weeks after we met.
Oh, it was so cute.
It was, it was
a knowing
amazing
from both sides. So there was a willingness from the beginning to go into this with hearts and arms wide open.
And it wasn't a conscious decision that we made. It was just like, it was nature at play being like,
oh well, I love what nature birthed from you both, because I've been in the presence of you guys many times, and you ideal relationship scenario and what you guys go through and how you talk to one another and how you really care about each other. It gets me so emotional. I'm like, oh, this is what I want. So and I don't look at it from like a damn, I haven't got it. I look at it from it's possible. What I want is possible, because I'm sat here at the kitchen table being fed amazing food, and I'm having really deep chats with Flo, and I just feel like that's when I feel in the presence of love is that I don't actually feel like I'm cut off from it. I feel like it's expansive and I'm included in it, which is a great example of a relationship. It makes you want to be and do more, as opposed to feel like, oh, I'm coming from lack because I'm still single. It's quite nice. So I know
I was going to say, don't get us wrong, it's like we have an amazing relationship, but God, we argue and we fight and we talk about things, but it's
what do we say? We say, I love you more.
I love you more.
That was always from the beginning, it's like, I love you, but I love you more than.
Yeah, and it's not I love you more than you love me. It's I love you more than that argument. I love you more than that disagreement.
I love you more than whatever challenge it's going to bring to us, because I'm willing to
and
work
back to the willingness, exactly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I know, Sasha, you put your finger up, which is very nice and polite of you. What would you like to say?
I would just add what Charles mentioned and flow with communication, because I also definitely see this as the core to relate to each other and to stay in a conscious relationship. And I would love to add the factor of vulnerability and to show oneself, because I think this made for me the biggest difference compared the relationship to Maria and every relationship before. And I started to show myself with everything there is, and just kind of be naked, as Maria put it. But this is, I think, this was kind of to kind of specify the communication a little bit. Yeah.
And if I could just add on also to what you said, Nat, and how you had the feeling of when you're in Charles and Flo's presence, like this is a kind of expansive love and such a beautiful relationship, and like you believe that the love, like this kind of love exists. I can share that I had the same experience, and for some years there was a really good friend of mine, and she has one of these beautiful conscious relationships, and I was just like, that's it. That's the love that I will have. And it was not like, oh, I wish I have it. I could have it. It was like, no, I will have that love. And it's there. And it's just when both people are in this same space and the same way of thinking about being conscious and coming together in that way, then it's just, it's a
gift, isn't it, to see? It's beautiful. So I'm going to move on to you, Julianne. Because you are now on the other side of love and you have yourself a new partner. And I love that this is going on for you. I think it's amazing. And so I'm going to ask you the same question, because just to give you a little bit of insight for those that don't know, Julianne does amazing work with a good friend of hers called Connor, and they have something called Sex Club. And Sex Club is where you actually talk about it as opposed to having sex. You go deep into the intimate conversations and the intimacy into relationships, and really get to know yourself better in order to kind of progress on your journey. And they're really good courses that they do. So even though she's fairly new into this particular relationship, the depth is there from the intimacy, from the workspaces, so the workshops that they co-host together, and there's quite a valuable amount of experience. So from your perspective, a conscious relationship, how would you describe that? And obviously yours now is kind of like going into that area, but yours is, am I allowed to say what yours is? Is yours, can I? Is it,
yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay, so it's polyamorous. I feel like I'm swearing online. I'm not. It's like, it's polyamorous. Can I say that word? I don't know why. But yeah, so it's polyamorous, which I'll let you delve into and explain, because we're rather interested.
Yeah. And also, you mentioned before that because you're single, you don't know what a conscious relationship is. Actually, I disagree. It's not just something like we can see in other people, but also I think something that we feel innate with ourselves, within ourselves. To really like, I often feel intuitive things. There's like, this is how I know this is possible. I know what I need or what resonates with me. Mm-hmm. I really loved what you said, Florence and Charles, to have love as a base. And also really beautiful, Maria and Sasha, that like the more honest and vulnerable you can be with each other, that also means you can be more rough with each other in one sense, which like gives, I feel, the relationship more depth as well. Like how high can you go, and how, and also in the other direction, how low can you go and then come back from it and still stay in connection and still be together without it burning out or imploding or exploding. It really resonates what you said. We met only a month ago, so it's only 1 month old. It feels super intense. It's the first time, I guess, I'm so fully myself without any compromise of like being myself, and to make that commitment to each other that we both do that, which feels like what a liberating experience. Like, wow. And then at the same time, yeah, it's like that the love is more prevailing. I also wondered at some point if we trigger each other, it's important that both people are responsible for their triggers. Because sometimes he might set something off in me, it has nothing to do with him. It's like some kind of like childhood wound, and the other way around. So it really this like awareness that we have these triggers that have nothing to do with the other person, and then to have these difficult conversations. But then at the same time, as much as I'm like, we need to be 100% transparent all of the time. And then and then we also had situations where triggers are being presented from both of us, unprocessed. And I wonder, was that now too early? Because you kind of like, I want to speak from my perspective, I kind of offload this on you, and it has nothing to do with you. Should I not take it back for me and give you the processed version rather than always the unprocessed version? And it's an interesting question for you both who have been in a relationship for like a long time, how you deal with that.
I'll let Flo come in and answer and make comments.
Like, you're in my head.
I know. I literally felt like Flo's like ready and present. Go for it.
I love what you said there about being responsible for your triggers, because for me, responsible, it's like the ability to respond to your triggers, right? It's like, how do you be in conversation and be so naked and so raw with each other, and take responsibility for what's yours and not project it out. And it's not that the lines become blurry, but it it's being conscious of, whether it's the way that you communicate, and being very conscious that you're not using words and languaging. It's a big thing for me. I can be very direct, and I can sometimes be quite, maybe fierce and direct in the way that I communicate, and I sometimes have to really take responsibility for that, because that's my stuff. And when I think about it and reflect upon it, if we're having a difficult conversation or we're triggering each other, when I get some space from it, actually, I can reflect and realize that a lot of the stuff that I think is an external source, that Charles may be winding me up, or I feel irritated or feel that he's not being as aware as I need him to be, or whatever it may be, actually it does come back to what I'm dealing with. So then to have to unravel that within myself and then come back to the conversation to take responsibility for the things that I'm triggering in myself, and then also recognizing that in the way I can communicate will trigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic dynamic. I grew up in an emotionally non-literate family, and I am incredibly emotional, and I had a wonderful upbringing, but that space was never available to me. And more recently, there was, if not even childhood trauma, there was a lot more trauma in the last couple of years, details of which aren't important in this conversation, but it was the traumatic experience which meant there was a part of me that was open and willing to converse and sort of chat on a level to Flo, who's the most direct person I've ever met in my entire life. And that part of me got sort of just beaten down and repressed back into my shadow. And as a result, Flo's in a position where she's always communicated directly with people, whether it be family or friends, and has always come up against this resistance. And for me, I've been in a position where I shut down and I go into toddler mode. And so there's this dynamic that we're both very aware of and we discuss, but has recently kept rearing its head, where I become unable to articulate myself. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I just shut down. And
so I think what you said, Sasha, about vulnerability being such a core part of this, it's, to be able to be totally vulnerable. And you said it too, Jules, like this, if you're going to share the highs, you've got to share the lows. And then I loved again what you said about how you then come back to one another.
And that always happens. You always come back to love.
And I think being parents, which I'm sure Maria and Sasha can relate, that all of these things are very much heightened. And I think becoming parents, there are more potential triggers, because I think on a personal level you go through.
And you just don't have that space. You have no space to come back. And I know Cosmo, Sasha and Maria's kid, like Ryder, Ryder's not sleeping through the night yet. I mean, he's an absolute dream. We love being around him. But the sleep deprivation, particularly for you, is a massive cause of mental stress.
Well, you're more raw naturally because you're tired. So suddenly you're dealing in a relationship that's very conscious, that's there's a lot.
Yeah, and because you're so tired, you don't actually have the capacity. You'll fuse before, for me particularly, when I go from willing to listen and talk about it to fuck off, I don't want to fucking listen, I need to get out of here, I'm a toddler, is so much smaller. But yeah, you work on it. That's what you do.
You got to keep working on it, definitely.
You got to keep working on it. There was the Path of the Conscious Man. Sasha and I, in a men's circle that Sasha founded, and Matt, who's one of the sort of, like, I look at him as a bit of an oracle in terms of like experience. He was talking about a passage from the Path of the Conscious Man, the book, where the guy is talking about his partner and says that, you know, your partner will challenge you every single day, and don't kid yourself if you don't want that, because if you have someone that doesn't challenge you, you're going to end up in a relationship where you might have kids, and then after 30 years, when your kids leave home, you realise that actually you just haven't been communicating whatsoever, and you don't even know the person anymore.
So we've got a question come in here, and it's from Jennifer. I cannot pronounce your surname, so I'm not going to even try.
Lopez?
No, I'm going to try now.
Shabshelowitz.
There you go. Did I get that right? I'm just going to wing it and just say Jen. Hi, Jen. Okay, so Jennifer has asked, do you think it's hard to be in a conscious relationship when with a partner from a different cultural background? And unusually, I'm going to speak to Maria and Sasha secondly, but I'm going to go first for Julianne, because I know that you deal a lot in kind of the single, when you're in the workshops, and you deal a lot with people with themselves. I think this is quite a lot of what you can handle on an individual level, and as opposed to what they handle. So I'm going to let you kind of answer that, and then I'm going to jump straight over to Maria and Sasha if you can. So if you wouldn't mind.
Interesting question. Because I'm now the man I'm with is German actually, and I'm German. And before I've only been with other from other countries, and I do notice a difference. But to be honest, I truly believe that it's the willingness to committing to be vulnerable and really show ourselves. And that showing ourselves, I believe, transcends cultures, languages, and is something very unifying. I would like to add actually one point of what I think is important in a relationship that I realized with myself is entering a relationship, and Florence and Charles spoke to that as well, to stay in love with myself. Because often I think I've just, someone loves me, brilliant. I just outsource the loving to the other person. Yeah, I don't need to do it anymore. And to really consciously actually do that everyone is staying this individual, and then these strong pillars come together. I think that's a very powerful combination, which I feel in both of you. Yeah.
That was a good answer. I like that when you mentioned the outsourcing of the love as well. I think everyone's been guilty of that at some point, and will continue to do so when it drops, I guess. But good terminology on that. So Sasha and Maria, if you would love to dive into that question and maybe answer it as well.
Yeah. So my short answer would be it's more fun even. Because so I'm completely with Julianne in that case. At the core, it's about being vulnerable, being open, and meeting yourself in the other person and showing up. And when I say it's more fun, then from my experience, it's it just adds some more spices to it. At least this is my experience with Maria, where I can go completely nuts with the Greek culture at some points, being German. When it comes to the time, I would also have said I'm not German when it comes to the time, but being in Greece and being with her. Yes, I'm German, and it adds something. I can laugh about it. It's great. It's really great. But it also, it just shows you. It just shows you very much your limitations and your thinking and your patterns. So I think for me, the answer is it's more fun. Is it more stressful at some points? Yes, absolutely.
When I'm late, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Or when we drive to the airport because she was not able to pack at some point, just like 30 minutes before, and the gate is closing and whatever.
It's more fun.
It's more fun. You have better stories to tell. And but in the moment, being in the moment
can be difficult. Sure.
Yeah, it's intense.
For me, I think, I love the fun because it's definitely, I definitely see it as that. I think taking the question, like, is it hard to be in a conscious relationship? And I will go to Julianne's answer, and like, conscious, being in a conscious relationship, it sort of transcends cultures, backgrounds, differences. It's really like about the core of who we are, and reconnecting to that core and reconnecting to your self-love. It's like the key, and not forgetting that. And I think, yes, there can be cultural challenges, like Sasha might not understand like why our family in Greece needs to get together 100 times per year and it's still not enough, or call each other times a day and it's still not enough. But like, on the other hand, it's like nothing to do with how much we really understand or listen to each other. And that's really an element of kind of, that's really a self-awareness, what it comes down to: the vulnerability, the openness, the trust that there is the love. And that's what Flo and Charles were saying, like, it's I love you more, there's like, it's more than this stuff down here, the love is up here, and the trust and the consciousness and the rest of the stuff is underneath.
I love that answer.
One thing to add from my side is thought I just had is that I think, and this is then also cross-cultural, and this is just very human, and it comes with showing yourself, making yourself vulnerable, because we want to be seen, and we want to be valued, and I think this is very, very important in a way, and this doesn't matter where you come from. If you have the chance to be seen, first of all, I think you need to do the first step. But then, it really doesn't matter. And we make fun of that now. I think this is a very humor, as Charles would probably also can agree on, is a very, very powerful tool to deal with those stressful moments. But as you said, the love is higher.
But humor, and then, but also not using it as an avoidance mechanism, but humor to make fun, but to go back to the core and the openness and the listening.
It's fact, when Flo and I, when we first started having like sort of, discrepancies and discussions that were maybe a bit more sensitive.
We talk all northern like that, so you can't take me seriously.
People where you come from,
can't take me seriously.
Like that, like, hey, love, what are you doing that for? Like,
it really brings out the humour. Diffuses everything like this.
Yeah,
it's like level playing field now.
I am part northern,
Also, I will add that although we're both English, both of our cultural experiences of growing up are very different. Where, I mean, although your mother is, she's from north, and she's not a necessarily emotionally open person, but she's emotionally expressive, not in her language, and she's a bit of a white witch. But Flo's dad is very emotionally expressive. I come from a family background that is very sort of, I guess, suffering from the sort of hangover from Victorian sensibilities in terms of emotional expression. And so, although we're both English, our experiences of emotion were very, very difficult. So that in itself was a sort of nano-culture clash. Go on.
I think culture, you can have a conscious layer. It's an opportunity to go deeper, I think, because depending on how different those cultural experiences are, you're both going to need to make the extra work, do the extra work in order to, work through things that are going to be different. Yeah, and I think that's a great opportunity, but it's, I guess that, yes, of course you can have a conscious relationship for all the reasons that we've said, but perhaps be prepared for more of those moments of vulnerability, but that's not such a bad thing.
So I wanted to dip into an area about masculinity and femininity. coming from my own experience, my mum was in the army and my dad was in the Navy. So they're both very military, and they, you know, they roll their socks up and they know what time of day it is and shit gets done like that. So they're very like precision. But my dad's very kind of quite happy, flamboyant, very hugging. You know, you'll walk in and he'll give you a hug, and kettle's on before you've made it to the kitchen, and he's just very emotionally ready and available. And then my mum is a slightly different. She's deep, she's loving, she's very there for you, but not as expressive. So growing up, I had a very masculine mothering approach and a very feminine father approach. And I kind of, from my own perspective, I'm like Flo. I'm currently Northern at the moment. From when I was like 7 years old, I got brought up here, and I am very, very direct, and I'm a talker, and I love to talk. I love to talk about my feelings and express. And I'm willing to go anywhere in a conversation, and I'm willing to cry, which can also be highly emotional for some guys that are just like, oh God, this is awkward. So from my perspective, I found it really difficult to try and be even more feminine, because I'm kind of a mix of both. But when you guys, I'm going to go with Maria and Sasha first, actually, I think. Oh no, I'll go Florence and Charles. So when you guys met, as you've grown and you've developed and you've understood the more masculine and feminine role, is this kind of, because from an understanding of what I have come to know, it's not about Charles being masculine and Flo being feminine. It's about the balance and having both, allowing each other to go into those different spaces and to develop in that. Has that kind of played a problem with you or played a role in your relationship? And has it felt uncomfortable in any way?
Well, one of our first dates, you were dressed in a tutu and a tiara and waving a wand around. So I was definitely prepared for the fact this guy was, willing to blur boundaries.
I'll try anything twice. I think it also comes down to a definition of masculinity and femininity, right? Because there's a line that is very, very blurry in the sand between what those two things actually mean, I think. I mean, I'm physically strong, and I can fulfill.
It's great around the house.
The sort of
see it, Charles.
I can fulfill that sort of masculine model, but at the same time, I'm quite happy to dive into a tutu with a magic wand and go talk to my sisters. Too. So.
You are a very good cook.
Very good cook, which in my mind, for some reason, I think maybe because it's not that my dad can't cook. My mum cooked a lot growing up, so for me, cooking in a family is, I don't know, I would associate that, maybe my cultural conditioning, as a feminine female role. But Charles does all that. So, for me, that it's shifted in our relationship. And I think I said to you the other day, I was, Ryder's going through an age where all he wants is mum, and, dad feels a little bit bummed out about that. And
didn't want to see me for like 2 weeks.
My suggestion was, try a more softly approach, give him a more safe container that he can, feel secure in, because he's, teething and he's going through a developmental leap. So he needs that security. And Charles said, oh, what, those more female roles? And in my mind, whilst I know that culturally that is maybe a more feminine approach, my response was, why is that feminine? Why is it more a feminine approach?
It was certainly an on-the-spot response for me that was slightly tongue-in-cheek, but also a product of my conditioning. And my go-to is like when he and you do revert to that, right? When you're super tired and you cannot be conscious and switched on, you get lazy and you just revert to the shit that you knew that's been pummeled into you for 34 years.
But it is true in a way, that more softly mothering way is a more feminine approach.
For sure.
It's now we're in a time where, and I think, one of, a generation where we are parenting differently. There's not this split role between a mother and a father. And that's a great example of the blurring of the boundaries in the environment that, we're able to have these conscious relationships that, it's not black and white anymore. There's a lot of gray area. And how do you kind of be conscious of those cultural conditionings and be aware of that they're a part of our upbringing, but not resort to that as a...
And I mean, there's cultural conditioning, but there's also nature, right? Men have 14 times the testosterone that women have, and testosterone is a performance-enhancing drug that makes you physically strong and, do all this stuff. And yes, it's absolutely undeniable that men should look to the more feminine traits, for example, in the business world, in the relationship world, but also you can't go from one extreme to right to the other and just fully adopt those. There has to be a middle ground where you mold together. where there's not this massive disparity, but
You're working
I am a
together.
man, I identify as a man, and you're a woman, you identify as a woman.
You know, my direct nature of communicating sometimes, especially if I feel very passionately about something, that could be a masculine way of talking. But at the same time, it's, you know, those boundaries are blurring, and that's part of our conscious, you know, if we take the idea of consciousness to a kind of bigger, grander perspective, that expansive idea of consciousness, everything is consciousness, you know, it's expansive and evolving and growing. And I think that relates to every aspect of what we're talking about. I think there's something deeper than just this on the surface stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to chuck it straight over to Julianne for a couple of reasons. Obviously, yours is a fairly new role and relationship, but it's slightly different because it's polyamorous. I don't know if that plays an effect. I've never been in one, so I don't really understand it necessarily. And I'm also conscious of time, because I know we've got another couple coming at 8. And I'd love it if you can stay, but I'd love you to answer this one first if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really one of my favorite topics at the moment, for sure. Because I've been growing up in a very, like, all of my role models were actually men. So all of my friends were men, probably because, of a tumultuous relationship with my mother. I never knew how to express myself really in my true integrated feminine. And then my weird masculine side was just a little bit too dominant and like just not in a healthy way. And it really took me with the help of like a really good friends to like really like go into my feminine and this soft side for this masculine, the healthy masculine to come out. And now with this man I'm with, it's so interesting. Like we had this sex session, and before he said like, you know what, I'd really like to surrender to you. And while we're having sex, he's like, I think now I'd like to surrender. And I was on top of him. And usually when I'm on top of men, I only realize then, like, I'm still not on top because they're still giving the beat and they're not surrendering. And like to really feel someone surrender under me was an unbelievable feeling. And it really brought out like this masculine side in me that wasn't this like performative dominatrix, but like this like just strong and present and caring, you know, and also like rah, like, you know, holding his hands down is like, but in a just very I'm missing the words for it, how it actually felt. And we also danced together, and like for me being able to sway his hips, like he needs to surrender, otherwise it's just going to be awkward. And then I realized, and after that he came on top of me, and like with like, you know, being like in his like masculine, it's like, whoa, was that sexy to like feel that strength. Because if someone can surrender to me and go into his vulnerable side, when they then go into this masculine, I really trust that masculine, you know, it's even more like, manly and masculine for me than it could ever be. And how that relates to polyamory, that's a different story. It's that's a whole nother journey of
that whole other show as well. Should we do a whole show on that subject, and I'll get back to that. Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. And thank you for that. You described that really well. I feel like I'm missing out over here. I'm like, okay. So Maria and Sasha, over to you in terms, and I'll repeat the question again, obviously for anybody that's just joined us. We're discussing the role of the masculine and the feminine in the relationship and how that has played out for you both, and if it has in any way kind of hindered or expanded what it is you're both experiencing.
Yeah, I can start. So for me, I would say in the relationship with Sasha is kind of the first time where I'm letting the masculine be more present or come out. I will say kind of from a personal my personal experiences that I'm not so well connected to that side. It feels uncomfortable for me, and it feels like something less familiar. And I loved listening, Julianne, to your story, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable with us. It's really, really powerful. And yeah, I mean, so I would say, again, I don't know if it's about the relationship or it's just happened at this point in my life that I'm coming more into contact with both the feminine and the masculine, but the fact that there is space to explore it. So one thing we have kind of been exploring with Sasha is connecting to our anger in a safe and constructive way. So actually doing 3 minutes where you just go somewhere in a safe space where you can just set the timer and go completely nuts and just release and connect to your anger. And you can, I don't know, thrash a pillow on a wall or scream or shout. And not sure what our neighbor thinks of us in Berlin, but yeah, and like sometimes Sasha will need to kind of encourage me and say like, hey, do you want to go do some anger? Like, you're feeling this and you're not expressing it, right? Maybe you're kind of stuck in the feminine right now. And I don't want to stereotype feminine and what's, you know, anger is masculine and sadness is feminine, but it kind of is that way. We've been conditioned or brought up that, you know, women, we can't get angry, and men, we can't get sad. So when I am stuck more in the sadness, he's like, can I see you angry? You know, like go and get angry now. And so that's, yeah, I don't know, just the first example that comes to my head of playing with these different narratives and different, yeah.
I like it when she's angry. Actually, I like it very much. I enjoy it. I literally enjoy it, and feeling that it's like then it's boiling and then she doesn't let it out. That makes me actually very angry. And so this is then when this conversation's happening. I can also kind of mirror back what Maria started in the beginning with, because I actually, for myself, would also say that in the relationship with Maria, probably relating to what I said in the beginning with being more conscious and more aware, and obviously it's an individual process of getting there. I am more connected to the masculine. And interestingly, I would also say it's related to being vulnerable, because when I look back in my past, especially also when it comes to sexual context or relationship and sex and relationships, I always had in the back of my mind things that I like, but I never expressed them. And I always feel bad about them. And especially feeling bad about the raw power that is in me. And this was, I really hit that for, I don't know, more than 30 years of my life. And with the kind of, or through vulnerability and through the communication, and showing this side, just also as you said, Julianne, with kind of being very vulnerable on the one side, and then kind of getting the allowance or openness for bringing in rawness.
Yeah, it's that getting the allowance.
Yeah, on the other side, that's so powerful. And yeah, interesting. You started again with being open, vulnerable.
It's boring. It's always the same answer.
Yeah, it's very boring. You need to be vulnerable. With it.
Well, going into vulnerability, we're going to go into a little bit of a more vulnerable space. So we're going to go into the subject of jealousy. And a lot of relationships can break down from jealousy. And I think it's probably one of the most triggering areas to go into, because it involves deeper feelings than sometimes we care to share. A lot of people are embarrassed by jealousy in the sense that they don't want to express that they are jealous. You're like, are you jealous? It's like, no, I'm not jealous, when definitely are, and you're going red at the face. And there's just this kind of, a lot of people just deny it, and it can seem like a cancer because it's related to trust in relationships. So I'm going to start with Julianne, because you're in the polyamorous situation, and obviously it relates to that quite well. In terms of having been in a little bit more of a deeper connection now, and what was the reasoning behind wanting to go into something polyamorous as opposed to I always forget this, monogamous. It's the right word, isn't it? Monogamous.
Yeah, that concept. I've been working with, like, I don't want to say just polyamory, I want to say alternative relationship models, because like I wouldn't even say I'm polyamorous or I'm in an open relationship. Like it's so narrowing, and I feel like every relationship, every situation in life, every person needs a different approach, and I want to leave that open rather than saying like I'm this or I'm that, or with this or that forever. Mm-hmm. And this time he was already in a relationship with another woman, and that is a different story, I must say, like, because before I was also in polyamorous relationships, but I guess I knew I played a first fiddle, or I knew our connection is stronger, or there was always something where I felt like, oh no, I'm good, and there was this internal mind game with myself that like protected me in one sense. And this time it's different. I don't want to have these I want to watch these internal voices, because I really want to look at it, what's actually going on for me. Why am I jealous? And I also want to be honest in the moment when I'm jealous, rather than pretending like I'm not. That's another thing, like, oh, I'm good. It's like, no, I'm not. It's like these things still come up. And yeah, it's interesting. So I guess in the beginning, it was like in the past years, it was mostly like, oh, what does the other person have I don't have? And I've come to a place where I truly believe that love is unlimited. That I really believe that. I also know, though, that energy isn't. So time and energy isn't. That's something different. Yeah. And then it's obviously like, what do I want? What do we want? How is it going to turning out? We're only together for a month. Like, I have no idea where this is going, but I know at the moment, because we're fully honest with each other, and he's also honest with the other person, which is super important for me. I would love to meet her as well. So that there is like just this honest communication, like as you said, like the one and only, and vulnerability. And I guess it's just like, staying open and looking up what comes up. Like, why am I jealous in that moment when I'm jealous, rather than saying like, oh, you shouldn't do that because I'm jealous. I think that's it. But it's a powerful emotion for sure.
Yeah. I love what you have to say there when you said, love isn't just for one person. It's so expansive, but time and energy aren't. And I think that's something that is so important to touch on, because, we fall in love all the time. What's really tricky is staying in love and actually growing in love and rising in love and being together and actually maintaining that space of love when there is this co-creation of some other egos that are coming up in the scenario. And that's the best way I can describe a really good argument. But basically, it's a very interesting space to go into, is that, and I've thought about it myself in terms of open relationships, and I've not been in one, but I remember reading a book about it, and it took me almost 5 months to read the book because it made me feel so uncomfortable. And when I finally got through the book at the other end, I'm thinking, I think I could do this. And then I was faced with the opportunity of that happening. I was like, hell no. Like, it was just what came up for me. I just didn't want to go in. I'm like, oh my God, I can't look at this. But then I've played around with the idea of when I met someone else, and I said, maybe we can have something open. And I was thinking he was going to be like, yeah, why not? Because I thought this is going to be the time I can try this. And he went, are you avoiding intimacy? And I'm like, no. Of course not. And then he's like, really? Because that's what I would think it is. And he went in and he challenged me on that point. And I was like, oh my God, I think I am. And I think I really was avoiding the intimacy, and I wanted to play around with the jealousy. And like you said, you want to know how you feel jealous. You want to recognize that feeling so you can catch yourself out. And I want to grow and spiritually kind of get deeper with myself and challenge myself to a point where, you know, I can not escape my emotions, but I can really understand them and try and improve them. But also that could have been at the expense of someone else and trying to put someone else into a relationship in that way, because to satisfy my own, you know, needs for challenging myself, which was also not really very thoughtful of me at the time. So it didn't work out and we weren't going in that direction. But the wanting of challenging yourself, I think, is a super powerful place to be. And it's a beautiful, you expressed it beautifully. And it's very important, especially for relationships. I know quite a few that have been open and then closed, as we call it, or has been closed and then opened. And going into them from different ways is quite an interesting subject. But I'm going to go to Maria and Sasha, and I'm going to ask you in terms of jealousy, either within the relationship, is it something that has come up for you? Is it something that you've explored, or and how does that kind of play out with what you have at the moment? Either one can answer that.
Yeah, I can go. Sure. So interestingly, jealousy, apart from even for Maria, jealousy was never really a topic for myself, I need to say. I don't know, maybe I was not conscious about it, I don't know. So with Maria, I know that there is no reason for jealousy. And I could also look at it from a fun side. There is also no time for jealousy. So our little one, it's only almost 2. So we spend 24/7 together. But
I wonder though, because you've told me in previous relationships it was very much a topic for the partner.
Yeah, from the other side. Yeah.
So I don't know, which is interesting, because from my experience of Sasha, I feel that he inspires no jealousy. Like his love is so grounding and so all there that there's kind of, he can tell me, oh, that woman was really hot passing down the street, and I'll want to see how hot she was and agree, you know, like, oh yeah, she was hot. And I don't know if it's like, again, I would say here it's just needing a huge amount of trust, that the love is bigger than, you know, a comment or anything else. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like thinking of you, Julianne, and something, a different form of relationship, as you very well put it, and not limiting it to a title. I don't know. For me, and we've talked about it also, like, I think, well, first, like, there's no time for even that if we were wanting to open the relationship at all. Mm-hmm. But actually, I don't know. I think I would struggle with that. And I think there I would start to have a need to, as you mentioned, Julianne, like, okay, I need to like be the number one, and then maybe it's okay. Or like, I need to know that like nothing will break us. Like you love me and I love you, but like maybe you fancy someone else. I don't know how I could yet deal with it. So perhaps that's an area that spiritually I'm not there, you know?
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, two kind of comments from my side. I think so. The first thing is, I think it's really, we have these conversations like, oh, she is hot, or oh, wow, he is good looking. So I think this is like, because for me, it's so
extra guests. Carry on.
It's so normal. I mean, just because we are in a relationship, it's not that all the hot women out there are gone away, or all the hot men out there are not available anymore.
If I can add, is a really great point, because I think often when jealousy can come in a relationship that is maybe, I don't know, it could maybe also be a conscious relationship, and maybe it's less conscious, is like when you worry, like it must be so tiring to constantly be comparing yourself to every other woman on the planet. Like there are hot women, there are less hot women, and then like there's you and your love and your relationship. And like, I think if you can get to a place where you feel good enough with yourself and go back to your self-love, then it doesn't matter if someone else is hot, because of course there are other hot people. And I think like all of us, just as a natural instinct, like you look if someone is attractive. It's like, it's just beauty. Just like we look if there's a beautiful scenery, we'll look if there's a beautiful person. And yeah, sorry, I added.
Yes, no, perfect. I mean, yeah, I think this is also life. This is excitement. This is, this needs to be in there. I mean, if this is not in there anymore, then something very big is missing. And I think this is also part of being authentic and staying oneself in a relationship. And the other comment I wanted to make is we also spoke about open relationship. I don't know actually why, not related to this conversation.
Was in one, and we were talking. Oh, how would we feel?
Yeah, how would we feel about that? And so and my point to that moment is, I mean, we don't know each other for so long. And for now, I know that there's so much more to explore. I don't need to search that in always someone else. So this universe, there is a universe to explore, and we are walking around on planet Earth right now. So I don't even think about someone else. At least this is for now. Let's see if we, in 20 years or 30 years from now, when the universe is explored, where we end up, I don't know.
That was a good dive in from both sides of you, and I'll just kind of add, you know, I think it's empowering to hear people speak from a place of vulnerability and honesty about jealousy within a relationship, because it's very triggering for a lot of people. So a lot of people can't even have those conversations or share those ideas. So that for me tells me where your relationship's at already, in the sense of it was just such a natural flow. You almost finished each other's sentences, which was quite cute. So
one of
good. So I'm going to get into Charles, but I just want to welcome the hustlers in the bottom corner over here. Hi guys.
How are you doing?
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. You've dived straight in. Julianne, do you want to stay? Because I'm happy for you to stay, because you all fit on the screen. If you want to stay.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure, guys, if we were going to have to get the hustlers in, if we were going to have to let Julianne go, but apparently StreamYard likes us all on, so that's perfect. And just to bring you up to speed, I met Holly, when was it? About 4 years ago, and I was living in Ibiza, and Holly came and stayed with me in Ibiza via a friend. I just chucked out the room and you came to stay, and we had a fantastic time in Ibiza. But Holly does an incredible sound healing kind of workshop and into yoga, but met her partner in very similar. Did you not meet you've met together when you went to his class? You were teaching yoga and you turned up, right?
Well, Adam was teaching yoga. Can you hear us all okay, first of all?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Adam was teaching yoga. And do you know what? It was actually the friend that you kicked out in your Ibiza room that actually introduced me to Adam. She was the one that said, come along to Adam's class. He's a great teacher. So I put on my jazzy leggings. I remember I had really greasy hair that day, but I was like, oh, whatever. Stalked him a little bit on Instagram, or quite a lot actually. And then, just rocked up, went in the front row. I fell over in the first half an hour, which was a bit embarrassing, but apparently he still fancied me. So,
but I would like to add something to this. I want the kind of yoga teacher that slipped, my number underneath people's mats while they're in Shavasana. There was a very clear line for me, and I never tried to get with students, as it were. But Holly introduced herself at the end with, I knew the person that you chucked out the room as well.
Was it Kat?
Yeah. Let's give her a bit of credit.
Let's give her some credit. I didn't chuck her out. She's been with me on holiday, and then Holly came to stay with me. So I didn't chuck her out, but she's probably watching as well at the moment. So hi, Kat.
So Kat introduced us. So there was almost not a friendship, but Holly introduced herself as a yoga teacher through a peer. And so there was something that could evolve from that, perhaps. It wasn't a lychee teacher seducing students.
I heard the story and I never thought it was a lychee teacher. I actually got told of the fairy tale that was the yoga king and queen over here that just fell in love on the yoga mat. So I'm really glad that you guys have joined. This is the first time I've actually met you as well. So thank you very much for trusting.
Nice to meet you.
You're literally going in blind like Maria and Sasha as well. So I'm feeling very trusted right now about this conversation. But you've actually joined at a time where I was actually asking a question around jealousy. We've gone in a few different ways, and Maria and Sasha and Julianne have have just answered a really good question, and we're going to jump over to Florence and Charles, and we're going to dive back in for the repeat of the question. How has jealousy played a role in your relationship, and kind of what has that come up as, and how do you guys deal with that if and when it does arise?
First of all, I'd like to say welcome to Bikram Chowdhury in the bottom of the screen there. Second of all, I have never ever been jealous of anything in the present or future. I'm only jealous of things that have happened in the past that I can't change. So at Glastonbury, at the Rabbit Hole, before Flo and I got together, Cara Delevingne walked up to Flo, told her she was cool, and stuck her tongue down her throat.
Told me I was gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Gave me a kiss.
So right, I know that I'm the best man. I'm sorry,
you
guys.
won. You won.
No, I won, but I know that, like, you know, no one else.
Charles can compete with other men.
I can compete with men. I can't compete with women.
You can't.
Very true.
Guys, I can't compete. There's nothing. I can't compete with your vaginas, and that's what it gets me. It's just like there's, you know, she beats me at everything.
Well, one particular thing comes up. I had a relationship with a girl in Brazil, and she goes to Boom Festival. And so there's been a couple of years in a row where she knows where we dance on the dance floor, and she'll just appear. And I see Charles just kind of like, he gets really rigid and really uncomfortable and really jealous. And I don't see that very often because jealousy doesn't play a role in our relationship. But I find it really funny. But he's obviously slightly furious.
I have to say, I did at Boom, this happened for like the 4th time in a week. And I went up to Flo and whispered in her ear, and I was like, I think the way we need to get this out of our system is a 3-way. And Flo sort of looked at me and was like, up for. We turned around, she'd gone. The ship just sailed out of the dance floor.
Probably a blessing. And the only time I've ever been jealous was at a wedding last year. I was really heavily pregnant, so I was sober, but I was awake at the party about 4 o'clock in the morning. And everyone was on ecstasy, so everyone was very loved up, except for me. And so they're all in a kind of snuggle puddle in this incredible room, which was actually an old dairy farm. So we were actually in the dairy. It was
in the milking
section. They had like it into a cuddle puddle. And, you know, I was a part of it, but because I was sober, I was very much an observer of the situation. And there were a few of them. There was a girl, and they were very close. And I could, my logical brain was saying, "This is totally ridiculous. You know, there's nothing going on here. It's just they're all high and having a nice time." And I was really jealous. And I remember walking back to my tent that night, kind of being like, "Oh," trying to shake it off, and it was totally ridiculous.
She told me immediately. And the funny thing was, the girl. Lovely girl, not attracted to her in any sense whatsoever. And I've known her for about 15 years as well. And there's all of us, like, you know, one arm on a guy, one arm on a girl, but we're all like, and yeah. And you were. I remember Flo was around one side, and I didn't see it. She came around the other side, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like,
At that point of the night, there's a lot of leg rubbing going on, and I was just like, you know what? If I was on the same vibe as you guys, this wouldn't be a problem, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But no, we're lucky. Jealousy's never really come into our relationship.
Interesting. And what about the hustlers? Has this ever played a role? Have we ever got jealous?
I don't think so. Not yet. In 4 years, nearly 4 years, I don't think jealousy's been a thing. I think the thing is, we've probably both had it in the past. My first relationship, the guy was extremely jealous because he'd been leading a double life with another woman for 7 years that I didn't know about. So the fact that he was, so he was very jealous of anything I did because he had his own issues around cheating and trust and stuff. So as a result, that made me feel jealous, you know, if he'd, I don't know, looked at a girl. And it's not really me. I'm not a jealous person by nature, but I think because of the way he was, it rubs off on you, doesn't it? And I think because of that horrible toxic relationship, I've gone completely the other way. So if you thought a girl was hot and walked down the street and said, "Oh, it doesn't bother me at all." I think we're all human. And I think we're both secure in ourselves enough to not feel jealous anymore. That's my perspective anyway.
And I think for me as well, we've both got a lot out of our system.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think we met at an age where, like, I was kind of done. I'm over all of that now. That's all in the past. I want someone I want to spend my life with now. and I was looking for a very different thing.
Yeah.
And so I think we both safe in the knowledge that from day one we've massively invested 100% in each other.
Yeah.
And we know it's what we want, and there is no doubt in that. And so there's been not really any space for jealousy.
No.
And I guess because we were both to some degree dealing with a significant amount of the public all the time. Like both Holly and I teach internationally. There might be like 200 people, 300 people in a room, and we are on the stage, as it were. And we knew that from the start. And so there was never any room for jealousy to creep in as careers emerged. It was all kind of on the table.
Yeah. I think I think it's interesting, like Holly, having known and spent time with you, and you don't really come across as somebody that would be jealous, and you're beautiful, you're very confident in your own right. But I think for a lot of girls, dating a guy, I mean, we can all joke about the male yoga teacher, but I think it means a lot when a girl can actually date a yoga teacher, a male yoga teacher, and be that confident within yourself. I think that's quite something to be proud of, because it can be very challenging, because, the poses in yoga are extremely explicit from time to time. And, there's all sorts of things there that can make you want to, but because you're into yoga yourself, and obviously you've come from that background, I guess it kind of works a treat with you two. Go on, flow.
That's so not yoga though, Nat, is it?
You pervert.
I know. I was not the only person thinking like, I only do yin yoga, by the way. It's just this yin yoga on my own.
Just a 5-minute pose, just staring.
Yeah, Shavasana, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best pose. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I think neither of us as well are particularly flirtatious by nature.
Well, I used to be.
Like, I'm not hugging. No one comes to give me a hug at the end of class.
No,
I'm not that person.
That face.
So
You wouldn't approach him, would you, on the street?
No, definitely not.
Naturally friendly-looking guy.
Whereabouts are you from, Adam? I'm trying to think your accent. I'm like, we're trying to make how.
It's a fusion of a posh school, but in Birmingham, and a bit of a lisp. And years in London, so it's a combination of all these things.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just to kind of bring you guys up to speed, if anybody's just joined us and they're watching, or if this has changed over in any way, you are watching basically the Talkwards. This is awkward talks about things that matter, and we're having deep conversations with three fabulous couples, and Julianne, who was meant to be my token single chick but just dropped it on me that she's now in a new polyamorous relationship, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So we're having a good chat about all different types of relationships from different sides of the perspective. So I wanted to ask, and I think this is quite an interesting time, because there's going to be some people, this is going to go out to a few different colleges that we're partnered with. It's going to go out to a number of different businesses that we're connected to, and there's going to be a lot of people who could watch this that will be in a relationship, and we're living in a really strange time right now, and there's a lot of people challenging perspectives, different opinions about what's going on in the world, and I wanted to ask about what the kind of dynamic is. Has the other person's family or the other person's opinions as such, or traditions, not necessarily cultures, but thinking patterns, ever played a role in the relationship? Because there's a lot of families breaking down at the moment because they believe in different things, and that's causing problems with different opinions. And I wanted to just kind of get a little bit of a perspective on how you could, maybe even from an advice perspective, I think actually, if anyone is listening, if you guys could give your advice on how to maintain the closeness that you have in challenging, opinionating times that we live in right now, because I think it's a very difficult time for people to maintain what they've got, and you guys seem to be smashing it. So I'll go to Maria and Sasha first. If you can give kind of a bit of top advice of what you could give to a couple that may be struggling with alternative opinions and maybe even family influences around said opinions, and if you've ever had that in your relationship.
So I don't think we had this in our relationship, so not that I could kind of point something out or give an example. Maybe I would relate it to what I said before, like you can have a lot of different opinions on things, obviously. I think my advice would be to try to understand the other person, try to really actively listen what is kind of the standpoint and what is even the need or the value behind that. Because I think with that, you can then maybe find common ground, like understanding the needs, understanding the values, because you can have very identical needs and very identical values, but come to a complete different idea or conclusion what's going on out there. But if you kind of dive deep, dive deep.
Dive deep.
And try to understand what's behind that. Try to understand what's behind the scene in a way. This is, I think, would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of it's very different time that we're all experiencing to what at least we're all similar age. We've kind of lived in until now. I would say is a very new experience. But as Sasha said, between us, we've never experienced sort of having so differing views. But I think Sasha put it very well. Someone's views will always be, there's something behind that. So why do they think that? Why are they why do they have that belief or think that this is how things are or how things should be? And I think being in a relationship is an opportunity to learn something always. And so it could be, in this case, an opportunity to sort of, get a new perspective and understand why might someone have these different views. I mean, if we put it in a non-current affairs context, there are different views from maybe a German or Greek perspective on how to necessarily, what to do with a child, in sense of here there have been discussions and small conflicts, but my parents are worried if Cosmo eats enough meat or has enough milk, and if his legs are going to be tall enough because of whichever diet. So Sasha finds it funny that this is even a topic, because touch wood is super healthy. But you have to deal with those situations, kind of going to the deeper understanding, what's behind this? And it's my parents fear that Cosmo might not be as tall as he could be, because they saw a picture of Sasha, age 2, looking super tall because the camera has taken the picture from really low.
I still do look super tall.
And he turned out to be a very tall lad. And so there's the fear, maybe Cosmo won't live up to the genes. And there you just have to come with understanding and kindness to the other person, and the patience perhaps sometimes to sit and understand, this is just another point of view, and behind it there's always, at least in these cases, there's always just an extreme love and care that's expressed in a way that might conflict to something you believe. That was one example.
This can be very challenging to see love and care behind so much unconscious fear. Yet this is exactly the case. But I think also in a broader sense, I think unconscious fear plays a big role, and then seeing the other person, making the unconscious conscious, speaking about that what kind of is under the surface. I think that might help a lot. And then also relating to what is actually important. So if we speak of a relationship, is it the opinion or is it us? And then also kind of the love as the foundation. I think this is very important.
Yeah, and if it's yes, relationships are breaking up, perhaps because they are just, that's how the fate has it, or how they should be. Perhaps it's a good thing. Perhaps the relationships breaking up shouldn't be together or can't sort of stand the test of conflict. And in those where there is just challenge going on, I think there's ways of dealing with it, and it then comes down to what we're talking about, this level of understanding and listening.
Maybe one last little tiny piece to add, because I bring it also into relation of staying in a lockdown. for months, days, weeks, months, and being in a room, or I don't know if you're lucky in an apartment or have a little bit more space around you. But you are very close, probably closer than you usually are. I made this experience. Usually, I worked very often. I worked as a business coach and a trainer in corporates, being out there. This means or meant at least being 3 to 4 days in a week, being off, being out. If I was back, I was completely there. And then realizing with the first lockdown, something is different. I love being around Maria. I love being around Cosmo, but something is different. And it took me at least 2 weeks to kind of realize, okay, you don't have this getaway. You don't have the exchange with other people and so on. You just be together for 24/7. And the love can be the greatest love, but something is missing. And I think it's also often a problem to this different topic, but kind of bringing too much or kind of wanting too much from one person in a relationship and not having other people out there, friends or whatever is it, to kind of fill in that needs. But then what I actually wanted to say, the point I wanted to make is you need to kind of create spaces where you can be alone and where you can retreat and where you can reflect also on your opinions again. So you need to give the other person also the time and space to actually kind of also digest and chew on your conversations, I would say.
No, that makes sense. That was a really good roundup as well, especially with the fact about couples not necessarily, maybe it's just not their time, maybe they're not meant to be together right now, and that's why they are breaking down. And I think that's something that everyone's questioned one part of their life over this time, but spending a very tight amount of time together is going to challenge you in ways. It's going to make you grow or it's going to break you, and you are where you need to be, as they say, without sounding doomy gloom. I'm going to chuck the same question over to Flo and Charles, and then we're going to go to a slightly different question for the hustlers.
Repeat the question, please, now.
The question was... I forgot the question. No,
Sasha was going on and on and on and on.
I'm sorry. Charles, you know me.
From your perspective...
I get it all the time.
Oh, bless you.
She needs to stay with me in lockdown. Think about that.
Imagine, Charles.
I thought he would have run out of things to say by now, Maria.
I love it. So the question, Charles and Flo, was about just if you can give some top tips to other people who may be struggling with a difference of opinion at the moment, or if they've got any family involvement, and it could be creeping into the relationship about opinions of what's going on in the world, just differences in generally how, you just mentioned very quickly then, Maria, about, a different diet for the child, like, which grandparents want more. It's anybody else's outside influence, and also a difference of opinion between the two of you, if you can give a reflection on that.
Okay, well, first of all, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one, and they usually stink of shit. So the most important thing to remember is that your opinion is the most important. And if you're in a relationship, particularly with Flo, that her opinion is more important than yours, because not because she's far superior to me in every way, which is semi-true. But because she's far more well-read and present. No, I think Flo's parents are the most easygoing people in the entire world.
They are indeed.
My parents, we don't have a particularly good relationship at the moment, and so they're not venturing forth any opinions whatsoever. My mother was a midwife, and so she's given small tidbits of advice for, medical things in terms of bringing up Ryder. But other than that, we're pretty sort of, I wouldn't say obscured, but I think the lockdown, the fact that I live 2.5 hours away from my parents, an hour and a half away from Flo's parents, it's been a very incredibly, I want to say insular, but focused experience.
And we had a newborn for the whole, Ryder was born on the 9th of March, and then 5 days later we went into a full national lockdown. So we were pretty busy and actually really benefited from that cocoon. And I think also that, we were very lucky where we live, that we live in a semi-detached cottage. So like what I think you were saying, Maria, or Sasha, about not having that interaction with other people. we're lucky in the sense that we feel like sometimes we have housemates, especially when the sun's shining, but we have our own separate houses. So when we need a shift in dynamic, we have the capacity to do that. And not only do we have our immediate neighbours, we're really lucky that we have a community within a stone's throw where if we really need that shift, that we've all felt safe enough to do that, which has been a real blessing. But I think we're really lucky in the sense that it's only really been this year and, you know, middle of January, winter blues and living in Wetshire, that we've really felt the kind of, you know, you talk about relationships breaking down. I guess we've been lucky that we haven't felt that burden of these extraordinary times.
No. There's been a seasonal effect on our mental well-being just from the fact we're exhausted and everyone is detached from people in a normal social environment. Even if you see friends you haven't seen for ages, everyone's like, are we hugging? Are we hugging? And there's that awkward start to a conversation where you're like, of course we're fucking hugging, but don't tell anyone that we're hugging. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's a responsibility that you have to make sure you're keeping safe for the other people that you may impact, you know. We've been, I guess, yeah, we've been lucky that my mum had COVID in December, not this year, not like the year before, so before we even knew COVID was a thing. So she's felt remarkably safe. And my dad's had it, they both got antibodies. So I think we've been able to have that close proximity to people and feel quite safe. In terms of people's opinions, I don't think anyone's really ventured forth. I mean, to be honest, I would never tell someone how to parent, ever. Like, people can parent how they want to parent. Whether or not I agree with it is absolutely none of my business. And you do what's best for you in your world, right? And I would never presume to tell someone how to do things. And we have a really supportive network of like-minded people. I think we're really lucky to have an extended group of friends where we're all in conscious relationships together in some way already anyway. So there's a level of respect there that I think. And also back to the original point, I think is that, you know, people can have opinions, but ultimately they don't matter.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. Their opinions only affect you if they let you.
The famous words of Dr. Seuss: "Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind." Yeah. So always, Dr. Seuss.
That's it, Dr. Seuss. So we're going to have a different question, but I know Maria's just put her finger up and wants to add a point to that. So I'll let you jump in before I'm jumping over to the hustlers and Julianne.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe it's perhaps leads to your next question or one you have down the line. But I was just thinking, like, when there are people giving an opinion, if it's into your space, let's say, then the thing that it comes to is boundaries and knowing how to set them lovingly, but also, this is the line. And like, I appreciate the opinion, but I will do it in another way. That's more kind of relating to opinions from others on, your own life, and not so much differing opinions about kind of, current affairs. But that was just one point I wanted to add.
No, I love it. I'm loving that everyone's like enjoying everyone's answers and also adding bits on as well. That's a nice flow. So hustlers, back to you, and then I'll go over to Julianne. So this one's about money and about kind of status and what that means in the relationship. I know you two are very, co-creative, and you were both very much existing independently, doing what you do before you united in the hustler love bubble that we're seeing today. But it's, in terms of money and the fears that may have been brought up, if and around that in your relationship, or kind of hunkering down and making sure you've got enough to last, has money played a role in any way, and how have you dealt with that? And also about who's earning more, and has that ever been an issue for you guys?
Okay.
We're balling. No.
Love it.
No.
We have nothing now. It's all gone on this house.
No. So when at the start of lockdown, it was immediately survival mode. We're both, like, Holly's fully self-employed. I'm self-employed, but as a business. So Holly got some government support. I was never going to get anything. I could furlough myself and pay myself $700. That wasn't going to work. So we did initially go into survival mode. At the time, living in a one-bed flat in London, nice part of London, but still a one-bed flat. And what that meant is one of us had to be in the bedroom, while the other was teaching yoga or doing a sound journey. And if Holly's doing a sound journey, it's Adam shut the hell up upstairs. I just sat on the bed motionless. But that was maybe 25 sessions a week between us, which is really significant. So that was this initial survival mode. We're quite lucky that due to circumstance, we could still end up making some money. We set up a Home with the Hustlers kind of online platform. We did that just before lockdown started. We had a podcast going just before in anticipation. Mm-hmm. We've set up an OnlyFans kind of in bed with the Hustlers just to get... No, we haven't done that. We haven't got an OnlyFans in bed with us.
Hold on a minute. You want to talk about sex tonight, and I'm like, where's this?
No, we don't have that. But we've been lucky enough to have some money coming in. And actually, during this lockdown, we sold the flat and we've bought a cottage in Surrey. We escaped. So we've now got a cottage in Surrey, and we have now no money in the bank.
We both had savings, most of our life, and I guess there's been the issue of, and Adam had a lot more savings than I did, so I feel guilty for things like that. When Adam has to put in more money than me, and I guess we both had to acclimatise to the fact that we're married now, and it's that weird kind of thing when you're in a relationship and you're boyfriend and girlfriend. I guess it's more kind of separate in a way, but when you're married, you think, well, this is a commitment, we're in it forever. So really, it's all going into the same pot. So does it matter if one person earns more, and does it matter if I get that or you get that? Because at the end of the day, it's almost like, not that we are one, we're still two very separate individuals doing our own thing and making our own money. And that's important to us to be self-sufficient in our own right. But there is also that feeling of togetherness where it's all kind of coming from the same pot.
But I think that's been a transition for us recently. I think up to, let's say we bought this cottage together and really have spent a lot of money on it and redoing it. We did put an amount in a joint account and actually had our separate money. Because when you're self-employed, your income is directly related to how much you're willing to work. So I would be in another country every weekend teaching.
Works so hard.
And so I think in that sense, it's nice sometimes to be able to have separate pots. So you can say, actually, I really want to get a new mountain bike. I'm going to do more hours and I'm going to buy that without any guilt. Yeah. However, when I think you're more financially tied, I own the flat. Now this is ours. And now we're putting a lot into it. It's literally everything we're seeing as our money. Every penny we're seeing as just our money, because it is going into something that's a joint effort, which means that I'm over Holly's shoulder in the supermarket. Being like, nope, don't get that.
But I want it.
Do you find that has there been any embarrassment around the discussion of money? Has there been any kind of like you just said, Holly, you've dipped into that bit like, oh, I feel a bit of guilt. Did you share that, and did you have that as a key conversation, or is it just something that you kind of just dealt with on your own?
I think that I find it more awkward to talk about. Adam's really good. He'll be like, look, money's an awkward subject. Let's just sit down and talk about it. And he'll be really manly and matter of fact about it. Where I'm more of a bury my head in the sand kind of let's just hope it goes away and just see what happens.
I think transparency is really important.
Yeah, it is.
And not beating about the bush. This is where the money is. Like saying, I'm putting more in, which is fine, but that's all cool. But let's see that as our money going forward. And it's all cool, but together, don't buy that and don't buy that. We're putting everything into this, and we need to treat it like that going forwards. Yeah. I think as long as you're transparent and clear from the get-go, you can avoid awkwardness, any future awkwardness through that.
Yeah. And have you felt, obviously from a kind of a masculine perspective, have you felt the need to provide in this kind of lockdown pandemic? Have you felt that you needed to do more in any way? Have you felt quite comfortable with what you are doing? Because obviously you're putting a little bit more money in. Is that kind of, the survival thing that men can get? Has that been playing on your mind at all, throughout this period?
I think pregnancy stuff. I think Holly was pregnant at one point during lockdown, and I think certainly there is a forward-looking thing of, if one of us can't work for a little while, there is actually making sure that I can make more money in the future. So that is always in my mind. I think a masculine thing is that obviously, if Holly was pregnant, she would be to some degree incapacitated from doing yoga classes and the like. I think hopefully that will be a responsibility I will have to bear in the future.
I love the openness and the honesty. So thank you very much for that and for sharing the vulnerability there as well. It's beautiful. So Julianne, I'm going to jump over to you. And I know obviously you're just in a very recent relationship. So I'm going to make this a little bit more about you personally this year, in terms of your kind of survival mode in relationship to money and what that was like for you. Obviously everybody had to check in with themselves, see what was going on, where there was money happening, whether it was, being used, being spent. What kind of self-awareness and checks did you have to do with yourself related to money to help you survive through this period?
Yeah, I've been on a quite interesting journey with money. I used to work in the corporate tech industry and earned like around 100 grand a year. And being in relationship then with men who earned less was really interesting because in the beginning it was all cocky and all fine. And then at some point they got intimidated and that really turned me off. And now I earn a lot less, but the relationship I'm with, like, he earns a lot more, but that's like, we're transparent of like how much we're earning. And I love that because like if someone earns a lot of money or they do something they're really good at, it doesn't even matter if it's like the money is just like a number on something they enjoy doing, they're good at doing. It's like, wow, like I cheer you on for that. That's amazing. And I also like to, like the recent sex club is going really well, like the courses are really going well, like they have a big impact on people. I'd like to share it with people. And especially the relationships that I'm in, that they are really proud of me because I'm proud of myself. And I definitely do have a fear to intimidate just by the line of work that I'm doing and or like previously the money. And it's like, for me, it's such a gift when someone can be honestly like just happy for me. It's just like, yeah, wow, amazing.
I love it. Yeah. Like when we met at the festival, didn't we? We met at Medicine Festival, and just our open conversation that we had in the very beginning, we just instantly were just nattering away. And I'd just come from spending time with Flo and Charles, and I kind of found you, and we just hit it off. And it's just the expressive way and the nature that you have and what you do and what you talk about and your passion because you love what you do so much. So for some guys, there's the German kind of efficiency of you, and then there's the kind of present part of, like the correcting yourself and making sure that you're staying true to yourself. Then there's the enjoyment of the passion. Some guys may look at that and be like, well, where do I fit in? What do I need to bring to this woman's life that already seems to have everything and seems that she's rocking on her way? So that could be seen as intimidating. But I think obviously your need with yourself to go present, to become more present and to kind of go deeper with that, is something that's going to help you on that journey as well. But I just want to commend you for just being who you are in this time as well, because it is difficult, when haven't told the hustlers what you do, but she mentioned sex club, and we're not talking about full-on orgies here. She and Connor own this amazing sex club, and they do really cool intimacy workshops where you get to know your better self, yourself better through sexual intimacy with yourself and exploring that side of things. So I imagine when you tell guys what you do, there's this like, this peak of interest, but it's more of an intimacy level rather than like, hey, I run a sex workshop. So there's so many parts to your life that I guess could be seen as challenging.
And very much, I think it's often like I find like it's a projection onto me that I'm strong or I know a lot or something like that. So where it's like really like I hold these courses to help other people find their own answers, because like I don't know how to do relationships, and I believe we're all just like, relationships are no static thing that we can give a fixed answer to. This is how you do them. It's like, it's an evolving thing. Like, when I look back at like how my grandmother did relationship and then how my mother did relationship, how I'm doing relationship, wow, what an evolution, how will my children do relationships? So it's really like empowering people to find their own answers, and also listening to all of us, because we all have wisdom, and then we piece together that wisdom and create our own very thing. And that means for me also like, yes, I look at myself, but it also means like I am a full being, including my strength and including my insecurities. And I want to accept myself in these insecurities and in this, that I'm not a perfect being, and I don't strive to be, and I don't want to be put on a pedestal, and I don't want to put other people on a pedestal, which I also sometimes do.
I think we're all guilty of that. Yeah, it's just the way you articulate yourself as well is so interesting. I love talking to you because you always come out with stuff, and people are like, oh. To like, oh, I wish I could say that. So I want to kind of round it up, and I know it's not been long for you guys with the hustlers, but I want to kind of round it up. But what I'd love you all to do is to say 3 things that you think are so important and valid for a relationship, that people need to strive towards having these 3 things that they can really hold on to find success in their own relationships. And I'm going to chuck it to Charles and Flo first.
Willingness.
3 each or 3 together?
Actually 3 each, because this is going to be interesting.
Come on.
No. There you go. 3 each.
Willingness.
Yeah.
You're next.
Openness.
Yeah.
Passion.
Mm-hmm.
Intimacy, but in the depths of what that means, not just kind of one type of intimacy versus another, like a deep, raw intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a hint.
No, go on, Charles.
Inquisition, in the sense of inquiry and interest in everything that the other person is experiencing.
It's funny because this is probably the longest we've had like together on our own for a really long time. Baby's just sleeping.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me your time. I love that.
So I'm like,
this is hot. This is hot, guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna have the best sex on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna submit. I'm gonna be waving a white flag underneath.
Yeah. And the third thing I would say would probably be love, because love is greater than everything. Yeah.
I was wondering how long it would take you to say that.
It's so cliche, but I wanted to find something else. But it's true.
It's true. It's true.
Real authentic love.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And Maria and Sasha, 3 each, please.
I think I have one more, Nat.
Oh,
Sorry
do
about that.
Do you?
Yeah. Being an absolute lol.
Yes, being an absolute lol. Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
It's really important.
Yeah, it's highly important. I guess it's the magic. Yeah. No lacking on the lols. So Maria and Sasha, 3 things each that you believe that relationships need in order to survive.
Should I go first? Complete and utter trust is for me the first one.
I go with authenticity.
Self-awareness.
Patience.
You could do more.
I need to.
I love it.
I'm glad you bring it up though.
Yeah.
And I only have one more, so
you can have one for me.
No, you're not getting out that easily, Sasha.
Trust, self-awareness, and authenticity. Yeah, vulnerability. I want to say love, but because of course that's like that's the key. But we had it, so I don't know if you said vulnerability, and we said it a few times during the whole talk. So
yeah, I like it.
So then I go with vision, having an idea about the future.
That's a good one.
Beautiful.
We gave him some good time to think of that one. Yeah,
that's a hint to me in this case also.
This is why I need all these patience. This is why.
You're doing good, babe. You're doing good. Don't worry. And Julianne, what about yourself? The top.
Yeah, all of the above. a true commitment to be honest, first of all, with oneself, and then to communicate that honesty non-violently. And then the love, first and foremost, again, to oneself. And then therefore to be able to love the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like. Have you got one more? Is that two? One, two?
Silliness.
Silliness. Yeah. Absolute lol.
Play.
Yeah.
And what about the hustlers in the corner? Last but certainly not least, what's your 3 things that you would give as top tips for having a good committed relationship?
I would say fun, trust, and communication.
I like it.
Okay, I would go for respect. The second one is a willingness to put the work in. Like to see it as a bit cliche, like a garden, and you're trying to cultivate it. And actually an effort requires work. A relationship requires work, and it requires effort. It's not just going to happen. And I think the most important thing for me is that a realization that your 2 happinesses are intrinsically tied together. And the moment you choose to make your partner unhappy, that's going to have an effect on your happiness as well. And so just trying to see at all times that you probably should want the best for each other for your sake and for both of your sakes.
Ironically enough, that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. I think people so easily forget that, and you say it, but it's a profound statement. I think people do forget that. It's, it's doing the best for the other person as well. Yeah.
And what about you, Nat?
Ooh. I didn't think no one was going to ask me. I don't know what to say.
Shots fired.
Spots. I know, right, motherfucker? I'm joking. Okay, so for me, it would be the ability to commit and not to run away, first and foremost. To actually stay and say, I'm going to show up would be highly important, and not to bolt at the first scenario. Secondly, forgiveness. Definitely forgiveness, because we can be dicks sometimes, can't we? Have to be like, "Oops, didn't mean to say that." So yeah, when you are a dick, sometimes it's good that no one runs away. And then last but not least, I would say openness. Be willing to be open to how the relationship might grow, change, fold, and develop into something that you might not have necessarily seen coming, but still be willing to wear that t-shirt and see how it fits for a while. I think that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I love the fact that you've all said yes to me, basically, and all said that you come on and talk with this, because this is an important project for me. And I really, having the awkward talks about things that matter, they often come up in relationships, and that is the part where most people struggle. And what you guys today have done is show people that there is, even in the awkwardness and answering each other's questions and helping each other through it when it gets a little bit tricky, and the playfulness that you've all managed to put into the answers that you've given as well, is, for me, they're relationships that I see that growth that I admire to have, and that I know exist. And this is another thing of me having these shows, and I've said so many times that I've got so much faith in humanity, and people say, why? You look around, they don't really see it. And I think if you knew the people I knew that I hang around with, that are in my network, you'd have as much faith in humanity as I do. And you guys are just so cute, and you're all adorable and open, and it's so important for people to see people like yourselves. So I want to thank you, and I'm really proud of you all.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
Thank you. It's a good show you put together.
And if anybody's got any hot, tall, single friends, hello. Over here. Thank you so much. I just want to say, for everybody else that's listening, this is, as I say, really important. I'm doing toe for toe with Boris. I'm showing up every single night for lockdown, 7 o'clock for an hour. This one's gone on slightly longer. But I am here. I've got so much more content coming on. We have the TV platform. We're going to be on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire Stick in a couple of weeks. Tomorrow, I have a really interesting chat with some of my 3 homies from Ibiza, 3 guys in what's called the Ibiza Brotherhood. And they are a conscious group in Ibiza that are really grounded and support each other through all sorts of stuff. So we're going to be talking about the importance of brotherhood. And then next week, we have a really important interview with a guy who was kidnapped when he was younger, and he was forced to be a child soldier, and he is now coming out the other side of that. He's an incredible artist. He's a really cool guy, but he's on his path to something really different. and quite special. And I want to give him the airtime and kind of introduce him to the network, and just give him the chance that I think he needs to see the faith in people out there. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free to message me below. I'm going to put all the details of all of these fabulous guys underneath. I think I did some of it already. I can't remember if I did or not. I was meant to give that job to the intern and I forgot. I was like, shit, I should have had all your details underneath, but I will put them in afterwards. So sorry, I can't do everything. And I just want to say thank you all for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock. As I am every night, and I hope you all had a fabulous evening. And guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nat.
Take care.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you,
great.
everyone.
Thank you. So just
great.
stay online, guys. Everyone else at home, we're going to see you later. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll close down for now. But have a good evening. I'm sending you all some love. Bye for now.